An Israeli Haaretz reporter came out and actually exposed Netanyahu's lie. Amir Taban said the annexation bill was proposed by a member of your government. Oh, so now we learn who introduced the bill and who proposed it, and it was actually one of Netanyahu's own party members. Your finance minister and national security minister both supported it and instructed their parties to vote in favor. So Gavir and Smotrich both supported this. It was introduced by one of Netanyahu's own government officials, and he's trying to pass this off as something that had nothing to do with him. But he did admit that this was a provocation against J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, and the United States for coming out and trying to pressure Israel to actually adhere to the ceasefire. Marco Rubio, as you know, went to Israel not too long ago. In fact, he's about to be in Israel, I think today or tomorrow. He's going to be in Israel again. But he recently went to Israel. He went with Jared Kushner, the husband of Ivanka Trump. And when he went to Israel, you know, of course, he was praying at the Wailing Wall. He put on the little hat. Again, this is a Catholic who is putting on this hat and going to the Wailing Wall. And what's interesting about that story, and Steve Bannon exposed this, is that he was there to apply pressure on Netanyahu. Okay, he was there to apply pressure. We're not here as friends this time. We're here to apply pressure as a foreign nation, and we are trying to get you to do something for us. And then he goes and acts like Netanyahu's puppet. So I don't know what they got on Netanyahu or what they got on Marco Rubio. I can only imagine. But this is Steve Bannon breaking down just how much of an absolute weakling Marco Rubio is and how this relationship really works. It doesn't matter what you're sent to Israel to do. You will end up doing what Netanyahu wants you to do. So let's take a look.
As I said on the show, Marco was sent over there. And the reason Marco's not in the room, not in the deal where it's important is, and he's not on 60 Minutes last night, when Netanyahu fired on Qatar, and I'm Qatar's biggest critic because of the Muslim Brotherhood, but when they fired on Qatar and tried to kill the Hamas negotiating team, President Trump saw how the entire Iran situation was about killing the negotiating team that was supposed to meet with Witkoff on that Sunday. They went off on Thursday. He'd had enough of it. He sent Marco over. What's the first? To send Marco over, to give it to him with both barrels. This is not acceptable. You're not going to do this. President Trump signed an executive order with an Article 5 protection. Think about that for a second. Article 5 protection for Qatar. Because of that, he sent Rubio over there. What's the next thing we see of Rubio? He's there with Huckabee and Netanyahu at the Wailing Wall with a yarmulke on, putting the note in. And no. You're there to send a message. The message is we've had a belly full of this, and it's not going to happen anymore. You're not an ally, you're a protectorate, and you're going to act like a protectorate. If you don't like that, then go do it yourself. If you want a greater Israel project, we're not going to stop you, but we're not going to support it.
Occasionally, Steve Bannon hits us all with a banger, and I say that is a rare occasion, but it is true. No, you're not there to put on the hat and go do the photo ops and act like you're a part of the tribe. We know you're not part of the tribe. You're their puppet, but you're the Secretary of State. You're supposed to apply pressure when needed, and he can't even do that for our supposed closest ally that we send billions and billions and billions of dollars to. Since October 7th, 2023, we've spent tens of billions of dollars to Israel. The official count is 30 billion, but it's obviously much more than that. They don't tell us everything, right? But anyways, J.D. Vance went to Israel yesterday because it was actually like, I think just after we got done streaming here, because he was supposed to apply pressure on Netanyahu and basically tell him, hey, look, we need you to get back into this ceasefire. We understand that some Israelis got, KIA, they got blown up because they were driving a bulldozer and they ran over either an IED or an unexploded ordnance. There's like a ridiculous amount of IEDs and unexploded ordinances in Gaza right now. So this is really not that surprising that an accident would happen. But immediately Netanyahu blamed the Palestinians. He said this was the Palestinians. They were hiding out in a tunnel for 8 months, and then they ambushed us. Doesn't make any sense, right? Behind enemy lines, they ambushed us. They had no food or water for 8 months, but they ambushed. None of it makes any sense. The Pentagon and the White House even came out and confirmed to drop site news from 2 different sources, Pentagon and White House, that yes, this was not the Palestinians. This was an Israeli driving a bulldozer, and they ran over something that caused a massive explosion. Okay. After that, Netanyahu blamed the Palestinians, did strikes on Rafah. Over 100 Palestinians have either been, killed in airstrikes or shot by snipers. This is what's going on right now. The aid is not getting in. They're supposed, as of October 21st, 2 days ago, there were supposed to have been 6,600 aid trucks that have entered Gaza, according to the deal that was signed, the ceasefire deal. But out of the 6,600, only, I believe it was 983 had actually entered into Gaza by October 21st. So the deal is basically, people are saying it might fall apart. It's not being respected at all. Israel abandoned the deal from almost day one. Actually, yes, from day one, they abandoned the deal. If you look at the amount of aid trucks that they've allowed to enter, okay, they never implemented the deal. So Trump sends JD Vance there. JD, we need you to apply some pressure. Okay. Now, one thing that should be noted before this is Trump has been on record stating that Israel will never be allowed to annex the West Bank. Israel will never be allowed to annex the West Bank. He hasn't publicly threatened Israel over this at any point up until today, but he said that Israel will not annex the West Bank. We'll never allow that to happen. Okay, that is seemingly Trump's red line. So JD Vance arrives in Israel last night, and what happens? We see this. Israel passed a preliminary bill to annex the West Bank, despite Trump's declaration that he would never allow this to happen. Very interesting. Obviously, a major FU to Trump and JD Vance for sending JD out there to try and force Israel back into this peace deal. It's like, you know what? This is what Netanyahu is saying by doing that. He's saying, you know what? Screw you. And we're not going to enforce this peace deal, this ceasefire deal. And for you to even try to pressure us into doing that, we're going to threaten to annex the West Bank. Now, that would really piss me off if I was vice president or if I was president. For JD Vance, he said that this is like weird. This is just weird. Take a listen.
Yeah. The West Bank vote yesterday that took place while you were in the country.
Oh yeah, that was weird. That was weird.
Yeah, that was weird. You know, the Israelis, they passed a bill in their Knesset saying that they were gonna do the one thing that my president said that he would never allow to happen. That was so weird. That was really weird. What a wimp.
I was sort of confused by that.
Yeah, it was so confusing. They said they want it, but we said they can't do it, but then they said that they're going to do it. That doesn't make any sense.
Now, I actually asked somebody about it, and they told me that it was a symbolic vote, some symbolic vote to recognize or to...
Yeah, bro, we're just symbolically taking parliamentary votes now to annex the sovereign territory of the West Bank. We're just symbolically, vibing in the Knesset. We're just taking those symbolic vibe votes. Really means nothing.
A symbolic vote to annex the West Bank. I mean, what I would say to that is when I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it. Thank you.
A normal response would just be like, well, I say normal. A normal response. I can't really say what the vice president should say to Israel, to the Israeli media, to the Israeli press on YouTube. I think it might violate community guidelines. But in JD Vance's shoes, what should he have said? He should have just immediately come out and said this was obviously a provocation against the Trump administration because we are out here to try and force Israel to adhere to a ceasefire deal that they are not adhering to. We are, as he said, insulted by this vote, and we will never allow that to happen. And if they do try to take any steps in that direction, we'll immediately withhold aid or support for Israel. Now, me personally, if it was me, I don't. There should be no aid to Israel in the first place. There should be criminal sanctions on Israel, and Netanyahu should be in a prison cell. That's just me. Listen, but Trump came out today, and he came out a bit stronger than JD Vance. He had this to say. He said, it won't happen, in reference to the annexation of the West Bank. It won't happen because I gave my word to the Arab countries, and you can't do that now. We've had great Arab support. Israel would lose all of its support from the United States if that happened. Now, whether or not this is true is another question. I have reason to believe that if Israel violated the wishes of Donald Trump, that he might actually not do something about it, because it just so happens that Trump cares deeply about this ceasefire deal. Israel has violated it for the past 12 days. Trump cares so much about it that he wanted to get a Nobel Peace Prize for it. And even still, Israel's violating it, and Trump's really doing nothing. He sends JD Vance out there. He sends Margot Rubio. It's like, I don't really believe Trump when he says something like this. Now, do I think it's good that he said something like this? Of course. But do I think he means it? It's a whole nother story. I don't think he means it. I don't think this would actually happen if Israel annexed the West Bank. And I do think that Israel's actually planning to annex the West Bank. I don't think that this is just some charade. I don't think that this is some optics, because Smotrich has said this is going to happen. Gavir has said that this is going to happen. All of Netanyahu's coalition members say that this is going to happen. I think most Israelis probably even support something like this happening. Okay. 59% of Americans, by the way, 80% of Democrats, 41% of Republicans support U.S. recognition of a Palestinian state. That's from a new Reuters poll. So the idea that the American public would support the annexation of the West Bank, I mean, that is long gone and out the window. America would not support something like this. So it is, I guess, the politically correct move for Donald Trump to come out and threaten Israel if they decide to move forward with any further steps toward annexing the West Bank. But again, whether or not he would actually do something about this, I hesitate to believe that he would. Okay, now, Benjamin Netanyahu came out this afternoon and he said that, he issued this statement about the nature of this vote. Now, keep in mind here, before I read you this, JD Vance said that the West Bank annexation vote was a political stunt or it was a symbolic vote. Now, what Netanyahu's going to tell you is that actually it was neither of those two things. So who told JD Vance that this was a symbolic vote? Because someone in Israel said that to him when he was there. But according to Netanyahu, it actually was not a symbolic vote. Okay, take a look at this. Netanyahu said the Knesset voted on annexation. The Knesset vote on annexation was a deliberate political provocation by the opposition to sow discord during Vice President JD Vance's visit to Israel. So he's admitting that this was an effort to sow provocation, but he's saying that he was not a part of this. And in fact, he's about to say that he actually opposed this idea. The two bills were sponsored by opposition members of the Knesset. Wait. Hold on. Rewind. He said the two bills were sponsored by opposition members of the Knesset. So who introduced them? Who introduced them? I'm going to give you the answer in a second. It's like if you have like an anti-immigration bill in the United States, and if you have a pro-immigration bill in the United States, and Donald Trump is like, this is a provocation because some Democrats introduced it, but it was actually Republicans also support. Bad analogy, but you get what I'm saying. Opposition members may have endorsed this bill, but that's meaningless because who introduced it? He said the Likud party and the religious parties, the principal coalition members, did not vote for these bills. That's a lie. Except for one disgruntled Likud member who was recently fired from the chairmanship of a Knesset committee. Without Likud support, these bills are unlikely to go anywhere. Now, an Israeli Haaretz reporter came out and actually exposed Netanyahu's lie. Amir Taban said the annexation bill was proposed by a member of your government. Oh, so now we learn who introduced the bill and who proposed it. And it was actually one of Netanyahu's own party members. Your finance minister and national security minister both supported it and instructed their parties to vote in favor. So Gavir and Smotrich both supported this. It was introduced by one of Netanyahu's own government officials, and he's trying to pass this off as something that had nothing to do with him. But he did admit that this was a provocation against J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, in the United States for coming out and trying to pressure Israel to actually adhere to the ceasefire. There you go. So, didn't take much digging to find that out, okay? Now, I will also want to add here that on this visit, one of the other things that J.D. Vance was apparently supposed to try and make happen was this international security force that is supposedly going to be in Gaza. And while it's there, it's going to be like monitoring the peace. It's going to be making sure that, the Palestinian resistance doesn't get all uppity. This is what J.D. Vance had to say about that. Take a listen.
Towards phase 2 of the president's peace agreement during this trip?
Well, I do. And in fact, not just me, but the entire team. I know Marco's going to arrive in just a couple of hours. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are in Saudi Arabia. And then I believe right now they're actually in the UAE trying to marshal support for the international security force. It's very early, but I do think that we've made a lot of progress in understanding what the composition of the ISF would look like and understanding what would be necessary for it to actually be effective. And then just to understand how Central Command is going to work with the troops who are going to actually be on the ground. Again, no American troops on the ground, but American troops supervising and mediating the peace, understanding what that relationship would look like. That's really what I was here to do. I think we did make some progress. I'm going to go back home and continue to work on it.
So, Vice President, did you get any clarity on how the Israeli government and other partners plan to disarm Hamas? Obviously, that's a key sticking point moving forward in this process.
Well, look, our hope of the administration is that the international security force is going to now take the lead in disarming Hamas. That's going to take some time, and it's going to depend a lot on the composition of that force. There are certain countries who I expect will be quite good at it. There are other countries that can play a role, but I don't think are going to be quite as useful.
So you basically have J.D. Vance coming out, and as this meme below says, that's just boots on the ground with extra steps. Of course, there's going to be U.S. Military personnel in Gaza if this plan happens. But let me tell you, I don't see this happening. You expect me to believe that Israel is going to allow Saudi or Egyptian military personnel in Gaza, and they're just going to have free reign to go and do whatever they want, see whatever they want, film whatever they want? I don't believe that. Look, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar was in Gaza for a very short period of time when he was there with the U.S. humanitarian organization that was distributing food aid. And he has now become like the number one spokesperson against Israel and against the Zionists in the U.S. for the crimes that they're committing in Gaza as a result of what he just simply saw there. Now, I don't think he went into it imagining he was going to come out being a whistleblower, but that's exactly what's happened. I don't think that allowing foreign military personnel into Gaza to see and potentially document and blow the whistle on the crimes that have been committed in Gaza is something that Israel is necessarily going to allow. I could be wrong about this, but let's see how it plays out. I don't think that this is going to happen. We don't have to imagine too much because Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, today he came out and said, if Saudi Arabia is telling us that in return for normalization, they want a Palestinian state, we will say, friends, no thank you. You can continue riding camels on the sand in the Saudi desert. Something tells me that Smotrich and Gvir and Netanyahu are not going to be too sympathetic of the idea of Saudis coming into Gaza with their military. Something tells me that this is not going to happen, okay, and that Trump's not going to do anything about it when it doesn't happen, okay? I mean, Israel's obviously still going to continue to kill Palestinians in Gaza, and the horrors are going to be witnessed by any military personnel who are there. The BBC just released this report yesterday that 60% of the children murdered in Gaza, in a new report that they have published, were deliberately sniped by the IDF in the head and in the chest. Take a listen.
Has compiled material on over 160 cases where children have been shot in Gaza and found that in 95 cases, the child was shot in the head or the chest. In most of these cases, the victim was under 12 years old. The cases we found run from the first weeks of the war up to July this year.
So you're telling me that Smotrich and Gvir and the Hasbara network, that they're going to be like okay with the idea of allowing foreigners into Gaza to witness those crimes? This, by the way, is Lebanon today. Lebanon, the south of Lebanon, is being bombed extensively. This is pretty much what Rafah looked like a few days ago amid the Gaza ceasefire. So I would imagine that this sort of behavior, these airstrikes, will continue as well. I don't think that they're going to allow foreign military personnel. And so as for the nature of this ceasefire being fully implemented, first, by allowing in the correct amount of aid trucks, there's supposed to be how many aid trucks? 660 aid trucks are supposed to enter Gaza each and every day. Israel's not going to do that. When it comes to stopping the airstrikes, stopping the IDF snipers, that's not going to happen. When it comes to allowing the ISF, the International Security Forces, coming in to Gaza, I can almost guarantee that's not going to happen either. And the question is, what is the Trump administration going to do about it? As of right now, all we have is J.D. Vance going out and saying, that's kind of weird. That was confusing. That's kind of weird. We have some stronger statements from Trump, but up until this point, it seems as though there's really no meat behind what he has to say. And I would imagine that later tonight, we'll probably see some videos of Marco Rubio at the Wailing Wall once more. So there you have it. That's your ceasefire for you.